Hi, boys and girls. Today for lesson 18, you are supposed to reread chapter 6, The Burning of Washington, D.C. We read it yesterday as a whole group, so today it's supposed to be in a small group. So if you have somebody at home to read it with you, take turns reading it, that would be great. If not, I'll read it again on here, and I could be your small group person, and we could read it together here. When I'm done reading that, I'm also going to go over the workbook pages with you, okay? So I'm going to scroll down to chapter 6 to get started. So if you plan on reading with me, grab your reader, find chapter 6. This would be quicker. And we will read it together. Oops, went too far. Okay, so chapter 6, The Burning of Washington, D.C. The British Army marched into Washington, D.C. The British soldiers were angry because the U.S. Army had burned York, the capital city of Canada. Remember, the British had troops in Canada stationed there that they actually own part of Canada. So they planned to get back at the Americans by burning the U.S. Capitol building. The British soldiers went to the Capitol building. This was where the U.S. Congress met. They set it on fire. Then they marched down the hill to the president's house. So they set the Congress building on fire, and now they're heading down to the president's house, which we call the White House. The British arrived just after Dolly Madison left. They broke down the doors and charged or rushed inside. And here's a picture of the Capitol building showing that it was burnt by the British, and you see the soot outside the windows. The president's house was empty. In the dining room, the table had been set for dinner. The British general sat down with some of his men. They ate dinner. They drank some wine, too. As a joke, they toasted, which means they raised their glasses and said, "Cheers, President Madison!" They lifted up their wine glasses and thanked him for the wine. After dinner, the British soldiers started smashing things. They smashed the dishes. They smashed the table. They smashed the chairs. The soldiers ran up and down in the president's house looking for things to steal. They took the spoons and forks. They took the buckles from Mrs. Madison's shoes. They even took the love letters her husband had sent her. The house was ransacked. So they took anything that would be worth money, such as the silver spoons, forks. We use forks in school, such as the silver spoons and forks and the buckles off her shoes. I'm sure they took some other things, probably her fine jewelry. But then they took her love letters. Those weren't worth anything to them. They just did that to hurt her, which is sad. Then the British general ordered his men to set the house on fire. The soldiers lit their torches. Then they went from room to room. They lit the drapes, remember the heavy hanging curtains, on fire. They burned the beds. They burned the desks and chairs. They even burned Mrs. Madison's dresses, all her fancy dresses, up in smoke. Here's a picture of the British burning the president's house. Then the British marched away. They did not care to take over the city. They just planned to burn it. Burning the city would be a heavy blow, meaning it would hurt the Americans deeply. They would be very sad about it and maybe feel like they can't go on in this war. The British hoped the Americans might feel there was no longer hope and stop fighting. Later that day, a storm rolled in. The rain stopped most of the fires, but it was too late. Many of the buildings were already lost. Later in the weeks, the Madisons came home. The president's house was still standing, but it was a mess. The walls were black. Help your brother, please. With soot. The windows were broken. All of their things had been stolen or burned. They felt they would never call the president's house home again. So it was trashed. It was burned. All the important things were burned. It was pretty much a destruction. And there we have a picture of it. And you could see, since they lit all the drapes on fire, which are heavy curtains that hang from windows, you could see where the fire and the soot came out of the windows, blew out the windows, really destroyed the house. And that was our small group read on Chapter 6, The Burning of Washington, D.C. Good job. Yes, you're going to know all about this. So here you have a worksheet, a multiple choice worksheet, 18.1, The Burning of Washington, D.C. So you're going to read the questions, and choose A, B, or C, and put the page number that you found the answer. If you don't remember, please look back in your book and read the questions carefully, okay? Because a lot of times it's going to ask you U.S. Army. Sometimes it's going to be talking about the British Army. So you really have to pay attention to what the question's asking. There is a front and back, but it's only 4 questions. You're going to take a picture and submit that. And then this is the worksheet that I'm going to make a separate video for that I talked about yesterday, building sentences. So I will do this separately so I could show you how we're going to make these sentences bigger by adding details. So we start with a snake slithered. So then they want to know, what did the snake look like? So we might say, the green snake slithered, by adding an adjective, okay? Where was the snake going? Okay, we're going to add a detail, and that's going to make it an even bigger sentence. The green snake slithered to the pond, okay? So we're going to keep adding things to make these sentences bigger, but make sure that they're not run-on sentences. And I'll do a separate video with that. Okay? Thanks, guys. Don't forget to submit 18.1.